Our chalice lighting this morning comes from Rebecca Edmiston Lang. Come in. Come into this place we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place, together we make it a holy place. Our opening words are a poem called Where the Map Begins by Jan Richardson. This is not any map you know. Forget longitude or latitude. Do not think of distances or of plotting the most direct route. Astrolabe, sextant, compass, these will not help you here. This is the map that begins with a star. This is the chart that starts with fire, with blazing, with an ancient light that has outlasted generations, empires, cultures, and wars. Look starward once and then look away. Close your eyes and see how the map begins to blossom behind your lids, how it constellates, its lines stretching out from where you stand. You cannot see it all, cannot divine the way it will turn and spiral, cannot perceive how the road you walk will finally lead you inside, through the labyrinth of your own heart and belly and lungs. But step out, and you will know what the wise who traveled this path before you know. The treasure in this map is buried not at the journey's end, but at its beginning. Please rise in body and our spirit for our opening hymn, number 1003. I believe Reverend Diana has instructions for us.
I do, but they're really instructions from Nicole, who sent them through me. She says, we will first sing each section in unison exactly as written, including all repeats. After that, we will sing the entire hymn again with the group divided into 4 parts. Right, depending on if you're going with your right or my right. Right, the middle will be split into 2 sections, and left. Again, I'm not sure if she means mine or yours, but Lee is going to be our song leader, and he will get us through this. Each group will sing their assigned line as written with all repeats. Thanks to Nicole for some guidance.
And some of you are familiar with this. We've sung this before, so it won't be entirely new. This will be section 1. We'll divide this middle section into 2 parts. Those over on this side will be section 2. Those over on this side, 3. 4. So it isn't really a round, it's kind of a sequential song, but we'll sing it all together through once, and then we'll start our
If it goes off the rails.
Sure. It's supposed to be fun.
Singing.
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going?
All right, I'll get to report back to Nicole that we did really well with that. All right. We arrive here today, as we do every Sunday morning, with both joys and sorrows in our hearts. And one of the many promises that we make to each other in this beloved community is that we will both help celebrate the joys and help bear the sorrows. One of the ways that we do that, though certainly not the only way, is through this ritual in each of our Sunday services. If you have a brief personal joy or sorrow to share, we invite you to come forward and drop a stone into the water and share at a microphone that one of our ushers will have here for us. You may also always choose to drop a stone in silence if you prefer. And if you are either unable or not wanting to come forward, you may raise your hand and an usher will bring a microphone to you, and I will drop in a stone on your behalf. For those of you who are online today, you can type your joy or sorrow into the chat or the words silent stone, and that will be shared aloud in the room, and again, I will add a stone for you.
And I'm on?
Hold on. Stone first. Okay, it's on. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Sue Viglaturo, and I have a joy. My son, Gabe, and Claudia will be getting married here next Saturday. So, congratulations.
I have 3 joys. There's no order of importance or ranking with these joys. But I gotta start off with the health first. I guess my eye is stable. Looks like the inflammation's gone. Tapering off the eye drops. Hopefully, May 14th will be the day I'll get that 5-10 minute laser procedure done. Keep your fingers crossed for me. May the universe keep your fingers crossed. Second joy is, I seen Tony Oliva in Walgreens, a week or so ago. And lo and behold, your wonderful support, someone gave me a birthday present of twins memorabilia, which included a baseball signed by Tony Oliva. It's amazing, and I appreciate it very much from the bottom of my heart, because I am a baseball fan. And the third joy I have is, I don't feel like it, but I'm blessed to see 60 revolutions around the sun. That happened on last Tuesday. So those are my joys. Yes.
Hi, my name is Eve, and I have a joy. This last week, I drove over 250 miles along the coast of California, watching the ocean all the way. And I got to attend Reverend Laura's church in San Mateo. It was lovely to see her, but the church does not have a parking lot, so I drove, and I don't know where, it took me an hour to find the rental after the service.
Hi, my name is Angie. I have kind of a joy and a sorrow. I'm not really sure. My grandma is having to make some end-of-life decisions. So my dad and all his brothers are getting together tomorrow to kind of help her make those decisions. So whether, it's prayers or good vibes or love or whatever, if you can just send that their way, that they help her make the best decisions for her. Thanks.
I have a few, sorry. First, a joy. My kid prefers to go by the name Monday and has decided to try she, her pronouns. A forever concern of mine that my kid, a reminder that my kid still has autism and is still working on social skills. She may have lost a friend this week from a play date that went horrible. A hope for a friend of mine who is having her daughter evaluated for autism. I wish they find the answers they seek. Thank you.
That's sort of a good segue, the finding the answers you seek. For anybody who was at choir rehearsal on Wednesday, they've already heard this share, but for the greater congregation, I was reminded earlier this week that it's better to ask for love and support and have it turn out that you didn't need it than to be behind in the asking. So hopefully it turns out that it wasn't needed in this category. But as a share, my Gracie girl, who most of you have followed her journey in evolution, for those of you who don't know, she's 19 and winding down her first year in college. And she has, I'll keep it succinct on this part. The long and short of it is we're very concerned that we might be looking at a diagnosis of lymphoma. I'm in business mode, so I'm gonna keep this zipped up today. Obviously, that's very scary for everybody. We don't have a definitive diagnosis, hoping to get that within the week, but it's very complicated all around. And in the meantime, like I say, I hope it turns out not to need it in this realm, but we'll always take all the love. And I'm a big believer in prayer and the power of loving energy sent. So we'll take it all, and I'll keep you updated as I know more. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mimi Law, and I have a joy and a sorrow. I suppose I should be up there, huh? You can see me better. Anyway, I had a wonderful time with my son and my granddaughter, and they came to church when she was here to fellowship, and she went right down and played with everybody. It was really fun, but prayers and love and just good vibes to my sister-in-law. I'm driving her to Mayo on Friday. She has a aneurysm in her descending whatever, aorta. Thank you. And it's not good. It's quite high, and she has multiple other problems. And I just love her. Love her, love her, love her. So please send wishes to her. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carla, and I have several joys. One, this past Friday, we were finally able to host our Venezuelan dinner that we that we put in the auction last spring. So we got it just in the end of the year, and we had a great time. Thank you to everyone who came, and hopefully you ate your fill. Also, I was blessed to be part of the pilot program for the new edition of the 7th through 9th OWL curriculum. I was able to go to First Universalist Church to do that, and we just wrapped up. And it's always such an amazing experience to be with these 7th through 9th graders who know so much, and they're so much smarter and so much more open-minded than we ever were at that age. It's always such a pleasure. And then on top of that, my youngest is graduating from their OWL program today, and it has been such a blessing. If you don't know about Our Whole Lives, ask someone, raise your hand if you know about Our Whole Lives. If you do, okay. Ask any of these people. It is a fantastic program, and I am just so grateful that it came into my life. So.
I have one last one. Other than getting married, of course, a joy. Claudia and I, this Sunday, we took a job at somewhere called Frontier Resort on the Ash River on the Canadian border, just south of Voyageurs National Park. We leave Sunday, and we come back in November. So both a joy and a sorrow to be gone that long.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Coate. I'm headed to Nebraska on Thursday to help my brother celebrate his retirement party at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. He's been there for 35 years or something, so I'm very excited for that. And his plan in retirement is to live for a couple of years in each city where his siblings are, so I really hope he picks me first.
I'm actually going to tag on to that because I too am celebrating a brother's retirement later this week. Mine is retiring from, I'm not going to try to do the math in the moment, 30 plus years in the Marine Corps. So I'll be going to New Orleans to celebrate his retirement. He has no intention of moving here, so. Yes. Do we have any online joys or sorrows? No. Giving it another second. I don't don't see any other hands. I'll just remind us that in an, oh, nope, go ahead.
I'm Barb Gilliand, and I would just ask that we take a moment to keep our fellow MVUFer, Leslie McNeil, in our thoughts. She's battling cancer. She's a member of our choir and hasn't been able to sing for a while. I know that if you know her, she would appreciate a phone call. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Just a reminder that in addition to the joys and sorrows that we've heard named aloud, there are always some that people are either not ready to share yet or may never be ready to share in a group this size. And so in addition to the ones we've heard, we also carry those silent ones in the sanctuary of our hearts. Please join me in the musical response. Generosity is one of the spiritual qualities that we aspire to as Unitarian Universalists, and also one of the tangible practices that we nurture here in this fellowship. With our offering every Sunday, we give of our resources to support the work of the fellowship. We know, of course, that giving financially is only one of the many ways that we support that work. We also do it with our time and with our talents, with our auction donations, given and received with joy. All of those are necessary for the vital work that we do here, both for each other and for the wider community. We also donate half of our collection every Sunday to support one of our community partners, organizations who are in alignment with our values. For the month of April, our sharing partner is the Trevor Project, which is the world's largest suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization for LGBTQ+ people under the age of 25. It offers 24/7 free confidential services by phone, text, and chat, as well as educational, advocacy, and research programs to foster safe, inclusive environments. You can give in person as baskets are brought around, or online using either the QR code on the screen and on the back of the printed order of service, or you can always use the Donate Online link on our website. Please give as generously as you are able. Each of us came here to this place in our individual spiritual journeys to the faith of Unitarian Universalism and to this specific congregation following a unique path that is ours alone. Each of those paths are equally valid. All of them probably had some struggles and obstacles and challenges, and all of them asked us to make choices along the way. This is equally true for ministers. This morning, you will hear parts of the journeys that led me and Shay to Unitarian Universalism and to ministry in this faith. Even in one clergy couple, our stories are very different, as you will hear. As you listen to our stories, we invite you to keep your own story in mind. Where did your path begin? Where has it taken you on your journey here? What choices did you have to make? What have you had to leave behind, and what have you kept with you all along the way? If exploring your own story doesn't feel possible or safe right now, we invite you to just enjoy hearing these pieces of ours. Perhaps you will find some resonance within them.
Diana's gonna be mad at me because I always go off script. But I just have to say that we've given this sermon a lot of places, and never have we been in a congregation that can sing "Where Do We Come From" well. So you're in good company. Don't worry. We have not yet found the congregation who knows how to sing that song.
I'm not mad about that. Okay. She does go off script, it's true.
So, some of you may remember when I preached here a few weeks ago, I talked about being raised Catholic. I was raised Catholic, very Catholic, in the middle of North Dakota. And growing up, church was the center of everything.
I was raised unchurched until about age 10, and then my family church shopped for a while before discovering the Second Unitarian Church of Omaha, Nebraska.
So during my childhood, we lived only blocks away from the church where my parents were married, the church my mother was baptized in, the church my grandparents were married in, and everyone and everything I knew was Catholic. There was no choice to be made. Not only did we attend church every single Sunday, but my sister and I both attended the elementary school that was attached to the church, which is the school where my dad was the principal, my mom was a third grade teacher, and my aunt was the librarian.
I went to public school with friends of many faiths. One of the things that actually led my family to search for a church for us to attend was that I began asking why my friends went to church and Sunday school and we didn't. After trying a few churches where I mostly remember memorizing scripture to earn gold stars, literal little sticky gold stars, it felt good to find one where I was not only allowed but actively encouraged to ask questions and to seek my own answers.
I was not encouraged to ask questions. However, I was allowed to get involved. I played piano for worship from the time that I was 9 until I was done with college. I served as an altar girl when I was allowed to. I was a reader and an usher, and that was all well and good. I loved being able to be involved. But what I never found and wanted was to feel something.
I was looking for meaning and depth too, and I was finding it intellectually, but not spiritually. By my early teens, the very things that had felt good about Unitarian Universalism were beginning to be unsatisfying for me. I sometimes craved easy answers rather than always more questions. I also began to recognize that I was missing a sense of reverence, although I might not have even had that word in my vocabulary at the time, and that I was desperately longing for ritual. My childhood church was full of people who I loved dearly and who were what I would now call secular humanists, many of whom had thrown out anything religious from their backgrounds because of wounds they had experienced in the faiths that they grew up in. I experienced encouragement to intellectual growth and to understanding the wisdom to be found in world religions, but with little or no emphasis on Christianity, which, no matter what you think of it, certainly qualifies as a major world religion. I experienced reverence and ritual when my religious education class used the neighboring faiths curriculum and visited several Protestant churches and a synagogue. I also found a sense of awe in the natural world.
I, as a teen, ultimately did find things that made me feel, things that offered meaning and depth. And that was music and literature and nature and friendship, but I never found it in the Catholic Church. I watched friends as a teenager lose themselves in ecstatic Christian worship experiences when I would visit their Lutheran churches or other churches with them, and I envied them that depth of faith, that sense of belonging, and the unhesitating commitment to a tradition and a truth that I just never found for myself within the Catholic Church.
We moved away from Omaha after my 8th grade year, and for the rest of my childhood, we lived far from any Unitarian Universalist churches, and this was before you could attend church online, long before. So seeking reverence and ritual and belonging, I went to church with Lutheran and Catholic friends. I quickly found that although part of me still longed for easy answers, a religion that I could not fully believe in was a worse fit for me than a religion that made me do the work of finding my own truth. Ultimately, I always considered myself a Unitarian Universalist, with or without a congregation to belong to.
And I was always a Catholic. Everyone I knew had always been a Catholic and would always be. So now I had to figure out how to find what I needed out of the religion I was a part of. So I chose a Catholic college. I went up to St. Ben's and St. Joseph, trying to learn my way into deeper spirituality. But of course, that didn't work. Instead, I began studying other religions, expanding my reading materials, traveling to faraway places, and meeting people with vastly different worldviews. People who gently companioned me as I chose pathways that led further and further from the Catholicism of my childhood. It was a huge thing when, during my senior year of college, I was taking a walk with one of my professors, a mentor of mine, who was an actively Jewish woman. And I had been to synagogue with her, and I had babysat her child, and so she was a good friend, and we were walking, and when I finally turned to her and I said, "I don't think I believe in Jesus anymore." She said, "Shay, I don't care, I'm Jewish."
She picked the right person to say that to. Travel and reading led me into deeper spirituality as a young adult, too. In my late teens, when my family lived overseas, I unexpectedly experienced the presence of the holy in European cathedrals, Egyptian temples, Turkish mosques, and ancient stone and wooden circles in Great Britain. I found a connection to the feminine divine through fantasy novels in which women priestesses served a goddess. When I moved back to Nebraska to finish college, I made increasingly frequent visits back to my childhood church, Second Unitarian in Omaha. I found that the culture there had shifted, including an increase in spirituality and ritual, which gave me what I had been searching for.
And after college with the nuns, I needed to get away, try something new. I had come to some realizations about my own faith, and I needed to go far away from everything that was familiar so that I could explore that. I joined a volunteer program, and I was sent to Tacoma, Washington, where I worked in a homeless shelter for a couple of years. And while working there, I discovered the feminine divine, as Diana had, formed deep relationships with other spiritual seekers, and was mentored by strong women of variety of faiths. Over the next decade and a half of my life, my winding path brought me near and far to what I needed, what I wanted, all the things I knew nothing about. During my coming out process at the age of 30, I briefly found Unitarian Universalism. This is quite a story.
You go ahead. It's a good one.
So I was living back in the middle of North Dakota because my dad was sick with cancer, and so I had moved back to be with my parents. And I'm in Bismarck, North Dakota, where, if any of you know, there's a teeny, teeny, tiny little Unitarian Universalist fellowship in Bismarck. And so it's 2004, and I Google, where is it safe to be gay in North Dakota? Because at that point, it wasn't. And one thing came up in my Google search, and it was this little UU fellowship in Bismarck. And I thought, all right, I'll try it out. So I went and visited on a Sunday, and tiny, like this big. So I stood out, right? So they were very excited to have me there, and at coffee hour, they all gather around me, mostly older people, and tell us about yourself. Where are you coming from? Why are you here? And I thought, this is my first chance to be really out and true to who I am. So I said, I'm in the process of coming out as gay. I needed to find a safe place to be, and this is where I found, and I'm glad to be here. And the older woman, who was the chair of the board at the time, leaned over and she said, oh, we're a welcoming congregation, but we've never actually met any really gay people. So we're so happy to have you here. Just don't hit on any of us, okay? I mean, these women were old enough to be my grandmothers. But anyway, so I found this teeny tiny little fellowship. I was there. It was a very safe haven for me for that 1 year when I was first coming out. And then I moved away and continued seeking and searching and wondering and wandering. And finally, in my late 30s, I answered a Craigslist ad for a job. I was living in very Northern California. And I answered a Craigslist ad to be the administrator of the Humboldt UU Fellowship. Another very small little lay-led fellowship in Northern California, rediscovered Unitarian Universalism, and found my people.
I'm just going to interject for a moment. I really, really hope that when someone comes out to us here, we never say, we're glad to have you, just don't hit on us, right? Like, it's funny, but it's also kind of horrifying to me that they said that to her.
22 years ago.
Yes.
Let's give them a little...
We'll give them a little grace, yes. So in my own mid-20s, nudges towards ministry began to happen, although it's much easier to see them in hindsight, which I think was me being in pretty active denial for a while. The first incident that I remember is that my mother told me one day that she thought my best friend would make a good UU minister. Let's just note that my best friend wasn't even a UU. So my instant reaction was a jealous, hey, what about me? Followed immediately by that denial I mentioned. What the heck? I don't want that. Several years later, when my congregation, Second Unitarian, was without a minister and members were taking turns leading worship, I very, very reluctantly gave my first sermon and discovered that preaching was nothing like the public speaking I had always hated and dreaded. Finally, at the age of 30, I went to my first General Assembly, our national gathering of Unitarian Universalists, and there I got an unmistakable call to the ministry. Even I could not ignore it. But I still postponed it. I was finally living my dream of being a professional writer, and I didn't want to give that up to become a minister. Eventually, I realized what I should have seen much sooner, which was that I didn't actually have to choose between writing and ministry. I didn't even have to choose between my sort of semi-competing goals of getting a Master of Fine Arts degree in creative writing or a Master of Divinity. I only had to choose which degree to do first. So I chose the MFA, and then 4 years after finishing it, I began seminary.
And your student loans prove that.
Yes, they do.
2 masters. So as I said, during my 20s and 30s, I was moving all over. I was trying all different kinds of things. I came out. I tried a lot of different faiths and traditions and churches and several relationships. Thought I had found my purpose many times, but there was nothing grounding me in any of that seeking and wandering. I had lost all sense of direction because I was not in touch with my own needs, my own spiritual needs, my own spiritual reality. I couldn't say what I believed. I could only say what I didn't believe. And it wasn't until I got that job at the fellowship in Humboldt and began rebuilding some groundwork of my sense of identity and truth that my call to ministry really made itself known and was immediately supported by the congregation there that I worked for. And I started seminary very soon after.
When I dreamed of becoming a minister, which I did for quite a few years before actually doing anything about it, I always imagined attending one of the 2 Unitarian Universalist seminaries. However, after reconnecting with my first childhood minister and having several more what we'll just call nudges from the universe, I chose to go to a progressive Methodist seminary with a religiously diverse student body, including a small cohort of about a dozen Unitarian Universalists. Choosing that particular seminary gave me opportunities to address the gaps in my childhood religious education, especially around Christian scripture and history, and it also gave me the tools to equip myself for interfaith partnership based in mutual knowledge and respect.
And I did go to a UU seminary. I went to Star King in Berkeley, California, because I knew very little about Unitarian Universalism. I knew a whole lot about Catholicism. So Star King at that time in Berkeley was part of the Graduate Theological Union, which was a consortium of about 11 different seminaries at that time. Everything from Islam to Judaism to all the Protestants. There was a Buddhist seminary, a bunch of Catholic seminaries, and then Unitarian Universalism. And I could take classes at any of them. And so during my time there, not only did I learn a lot about Unitarian Universalism, but I also took many classes at the Catholic and Protestant schools because I was trying to reintegrate some of Christianity back into my belief system, to rediscover some of the beauty within that tradition. And later in my formation process, after I did my internship up at Unity in St. Paul, I decided to do an extra year of chaplaincy training. I worked in Ebenezer Care Facility in Burnsville, which is a Lutheran home memory care facility, senior living. And in chaplaincy training, my own theology came second to the theology of those I was serving. And so, given that they were pretty conservative Lutherans, I was preaching from the Bible, I was giving communion and giving blessings. And all of that reintegration was necessary. It helped me heal some of the hurt that had accumulated during all the years that Catholicism had told me that I had less value as a woman, and especially as a gay woman. It also helped me separate the religion of Catholicism from the church, to remember the essence of Jesus' message without having it all tangled up in millennia of patriarchy and empire and capitalism.
I too carried some negative messages from my childhood church. Not about my value as a woman, especially since the 2 ministers who served Second Unitarian while I was there were both women, so I always knew ministry was an option for me. But the harmful and hurtful messages that I absorbed from my childhood was that Unitarian Universalists are exclusively a rational people, and more harmfully, that means there is no place for spirituality or mysticism, no room for mystery in our faith. Even after I understood that not all Unitarian Universalists are humanists, I still thought that I had to choose between being a humanist and being spiritual. I rejected the label humanist for myself for a very long time because I associated it with the disdain that I had witnessed some humanists expressing for people like me, people who had mystical experiences, people who love ritual, people whose faith is found not only in our heads, but also in our hearts and spirits. Multiple times I had people speak about reason and spirituality as if they are opposite ends of a spectrum, and I just don't buy into that false dichotomy because I feel like I'm both a rational person and a spiritual one. During my ministerial internship, I read William Murray's book, Reason and Reverence, and was finally able to claim the humanist side of our faith for myself. I realized that just as that book title suggests, I didn't have to choose between the reason or rationality that had attracted me and my family to Unitarian Universalism all those years ago, and the spirituality that I had missed in those early years and worked so hard to find. I realized finally that our faith is large enough to hold both.
So these very different paths led us to remarkably similar places. First, serving as Unitarian Universalist ministers in small congregations in northern New England, which is where we were when we got together and met. And then moving back here, creating an entrepreneurial ministry together, and now both serving congregations here in the Twin Cities. Poet and author Paulo Coelho says, "It's one thing to feel that you are on the right path, but it's another to think that yours is the only path." As we said at the beginning of this sermon, each of us, each of you, came here following a path that is yours alone, and each of those paths is valuable and valid. Maybe some of you saw some of your story in mine or in Diana's, or some of both, or none at all, and that's okay. Whatever your path was, it brought you here, and it is part of the beauty that you bring to the richness of this congregation, of this fellowship, of the diversity of this community. You probably heard some things that surprised you in one or both of our stories. We often learn new things about each other every time we give this sermon because I go off script and tell stories, and sometimes Diana does too. What we hope you will take away from this is the reminder that none of us can assume we fully know or understand the journey that brought anyone else to this place. Sometimes we can forget this. Sometimes we can forget that diversity is what makes us strong and deep. Sometimes we can forget that not everyone comes to this faith from somewhere else. There are people like Diana who were born into or raised UU. And we can forget that even those who have been UU all their lives have their own journeys that they've made, continue to make, including questions and doubts and seeking and discernment. We can forget that not all of us come here wounded from previous religious experience. And we can forget that the rich theological diversity of which we are so proud and by which we are so blessed can, will, always has, and certainly does include Christianity, reverence, mystery, ritual. As you heard, I had a lot of work to do to welcome the Christian part of my own story back into myself. And I don't think I'm alone in that. As ministers from very different backgrounds, we have both heard from UUs in all of the different congregations we've served who identify themselves as Christian UUs, that one part of themselves that they feel is very unwelcome in most of our churches and fellowships is their Christianity. So we ask that we vow to do better at welcoming everyone into our communities fully.
So how do we stop making assumptions about our fellow congregants? How do we begin to understand and value each person's personal search for truth and meaning? I think the answer is that we take a risk. We have the courage to tell our stories and to listen. I wonder if you know what the person sitting next to you, especially if they're not a member of your family, if you know what they believe deep down. Are they a theist or a humanist? Do they identify more with Unitarian theology or Universalist? What or who along their path influenced their beliefs? We don't always have those conversations. And what about you? What from your past can you reclaim, reframe, rediscover in the safety of this community? What do you need to let go of in order to move forward in your own spiritual journey and the journey of this fellowship collectively? And perhaps most importantly, for the health and the future of this fellowship, how can we be more fully welcoming of those whose beliefs are different from our own? Many of you have heard me say that one of the things that attracted me to MVUUF when you were searching for a new minister last year is the fact that there are, in this relatively small congregation, affinity groups for humanists, Buddhists, pagans, and Christians. That's pretty impressive. I haven't seen that in a congregation of this size. I haven't really even seen it in some of the big ones. I thought at that time how nice it would be to serve for the very first time in my decade-long ministry career a congregation where no one, Christian or otherwise, would come out to me in a whisper because they felt that their personal theology would not be welcomed and might even be scorned. In my first month here, when I asked you in one of my early services what you love about this fellowship, some of you named that pluralism, citing those 4 groups, and that reinforced my sense that this is a good fit for me as a minister who values pluralism. However, while we do have theological diversity here, I have recently been hearing stories from people who have noticed reactions, mostly facial expressions, to certain spiritual language. Those reactions reveal that there are those here who are in fact judgmental and perhaps even disdainful, to use the word I used for my childhood experience, toward those whose theology differs from theirs. That's not pluralism. It's not even tolerance, friends. And it's not actually even good manners. While it is a small number of people who have come to me with those stories, and I believe it is also a small number of people who are having those visible reactions, it is a potentially large problem in terms of how complete our welcome actually is. Saying that we value religious pluralism, promoting those 4 groups, and then displaying visible displeasure when people use language that we personally wouldn't choose is at best a mixed message, and at worst a blatant act of unwelcoming that makes some people think that they need to keep their theological language in the closet here, in a way that we would never expect anyone to keep their gender identity or sexual orientation in the closet. The presence of difference is not pluralism, it is diversity. The reaction to that diversity is where pluralism is possible, but not guaranteed. There are many definitions of pluralism, and I'm not going to take that linguistic dive today, but what I will share is what the Unitarian Universalist shared values in the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws say about pluralism, which is one of those shared values. It says, quote, "We are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology." Treating each other as sacred beings, even when we express differences in culture, experience, or theology, is pluralism in practice rather than just theory. That's what I hope that we will strive to live out. This is something we're going to talk more about in the future, and it was not initially part of our plan for today's service. But I could not have us preach about pluralism today without naming this issue. I hope that we will choose together to demonstrate the full pluralism that many of us are so proud of here at MVUUF. Everything that Shay and I have talked about today can point the way toward that. We can speak our truths with respect, listen to others with curiosity and respect even when we disagree, and know that in a group of over 130 adults, a congregation that's part of a denomination without a creed, that we will sometimes hear language that is not how we personally describe our spiritual reality. We can allow others to use the language that best expresses their spiritual reality, even if it's outside of our comfort zones. And we can think whatever we want about that, but we can also choose not to show anything less than respect. Spiritual growth only happens when we all show up authentically. We say in our welcome words each week that we invite everyone to bring their whole selves here, and that needs to include their spiritual language. Spiritual growth happens when we do that, when we show up fully, and when we take risks, encourage and listen deeply to each other's stories, and ground ourselves in our shared values while celebrating the wild and wonderful variety of theologies that exist among us. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 318, We Would Be One. As we prepare to leave our time of shared worship, may we have the courage to share the stories of our own journeys and the openness to listen and to honor the journeys of those who are here with us and those who have yet to join us. May it be so. Please join me in the words of our chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.